Hi, my name's Joseph Healy, and I'm delighted to be here talking about building a NeoBank based on relationship banking principles, which is really the story of Judo Bank, which is a bank focused on small to mid-sized business economy. And when we started thinking about Judo 5 years ago, one of the most important things that we decided to do was to be very clear on the purpose of the organization. What does Judo stand for? And when it came to purpose, we wanted this organization to be known as the most trusted SME business bank in Australia. And everything that we do strategically as we think about the future of the organization is anchored in this strong sense of purpose. And that was one of the most important things that we did at the beginning of the journey of Judo. What I'd like to do in the next couple of minutes is just walk through where we are at today and where the Judo story has got us to, and then go back and talk about how we actually built the business and how we got our position, got the business to where it is today. So in terms of where we are today, I'd just like to move to a quick snapshot of where the business is today. Our lending book is now over $3 billion and our deposit book is at just over $2.3 billion. We got our banking license just over 2 years ago at the end of April 2019, and that's really when the business started to grow. At the same time, we've got 5 offices around the country. Our number of employees is now closer to 300 than it is to 269. And across a whole range of different measures, we've been really, really pleased with the way that the market has supported Judo and the growth that we're seeing in the business, even though we've come through one of the most difficult 12 months, as everybody has with COVID. The business has grown really strongly. And I think almost uniquely amongst new banks or new neobanks anywhere in the world, we got to profitability late last year. So that was within 3 years, got the business from a PowerPoint to profitability, and it's been running profitably every month since then. And that was an important milestone for us because so many new businesses launch and after 3 or 4 years of operating, not show any evidence of profitability. It might be growing very strongly, but profitability is often a very lagging measure of success. We felt that we could grow, that we could establish a strong brand in the market, but it was important for us that we got to profitability within the first 3 years of operation, which we've done. And I'll come back and talk about how we did that. If I then move just to a snapshot, and I hope this is easy for everyone to read, but a snapshot of our history. We started basically thinking about Judo in 2015, but we actively working on Judo in 2016 when we raised our first amount of capital from external investors. It was a small amount of seed capital at $6 million, but the capital story since then has been we think, a very, very good story. For initially getting $6 million, we raised $20 million in late 2016. And then if I kind of fast forward right through till 2021, we've raised over $1.1 billion of equity with a very, very strong shareholder base, some very strong blue chip names, global in nature, but we felt it was really important that we attracted very credible shareholders. There is an old Arab saying, tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. And therefore, when we were thinking about our shareholders, we wanted shareholders that would reflect well on the company that we were seeking to build. And we've been delighted with the quality of those shareholders. The story of the company today is that we're now in a position where we're thinking about potentially going to the public equity markets at some stage, maybe in late 21 or early 22. No firm decision taken on that. But given the growth that we're seeing in the business and the need for additional capital, one clear option for us is to think about going to the public equity market. And as we kind of look forward to 2022 and 23, we see a constant strong growth story, based on a very strong foundation that we put in place back in 2016 through to 2020. And I'll come back and talk about that now, actually, because it's one thing reflecting on where you are today, but there's lots of real knowledge and information and insights in how you actually got there that are relevant to other new businesses, other startups. Now, starting at the beginning, I mean, anybody who's been involved in building a new business will know some of the challenges and stress that goes with trying to do that, and some of the risks. I mean, trying to enter the banking market in Australia was not without its risks. I mean, initially when we were talking to investors, without exception, the investors said, well, we love the business plan. We think you've got a really experienced management team, but we can't see how you can build a profitable banking business in a market that is dominated by giants, and largely the four major banks. Most investors felt it was going to be very difficult to enter the market and build a sustainable business proposition given the dominance of the incumbent major banks. So the first challenge we had was convincing shareholders or investors that we actually could build a profitable bank. And we visited close to 90 investors around the world: Australia, in the Middle East, in London, New York, in Beijing, in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore. We did that 3 or 4 times in 2016, and the same again in 2017. Most of the investors that we talked to in the early stages said, we love it, come back and speak to us when you're profitable, or come back and speak to us when the business is open. So it really was the first lesson when it comes to building a new business is you've got to be very resilient. You've got to be very passionate about what your business stands for. You've got to be very resilient and not get disappointed or persuaded to give up by the fact that people are not willing to back you. You've got to be passionate about what you're trying to do. And eventually you find that one investor. And it's the first investor that really unlocks the investor market for you. We spent the best part of 18 months trying to find that first investor. When we got that first investor, we then found that other investors very quickly came. So resilience and passion for what it is you're trying to do are so important. The other thing that was a big focus for us in 2016 was making sure that we were building a very robust business model. And what I mean by that is that we went through the A to Z of how a bank would work, what the risks are, how would you mitigate those risks, what are the things that could really kill the business in its early, most vulnerable years, and how would we manage that? How are we going to grow the business? How able were we to scale this business? There's no point starting off with a small business and being stuck as a small business. We determined at the beginning that we were going to need about $1.5 billion of capital over the first 4 years of Judo's life. And so when we spoke to investors, we said that to them. That, in thinking about Judo, don't think about $10 or $20 million of investment. Think about $1.5 billion over 4 years. And we were very clear about that. In fact, it's a source of some pride, I have to say, that when I look at the strategic narrative that we have around Judo today, that it is exactly the same strategic narrative that we had around Judo in 2016. There has been no change. And that, I feel, is also a very important message about the consistency of your strategic narrative, the consistency about the vision that you built for the business. Visualizing the business, what it could look like in 5 or 10 years was also very important for us. Some people, some entrepreneurs, people opening up new businesses will say, let's start small and see where it takes us. Our philosophy is let's think big and then grow to that. If you think small, it can quite often become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And again, I know from speaking to lots of entrepreneurs, people who want to build new banks or build new businesses, that they're sometimes trapped in the reality of the constraints that they face today. And what I mean by that is they might say, well, I've got access to $10 million maybe, and therefore the way I'm going to visualize this business opportunity is shaped by that constraint. Whereas we said we're going to need $1.5 billion to build out to this company that we visualize, and we kept on thinking about this. I think Stephen Covey, a very famous business guru, once said that it's really important to start with the end in mind. And certainly that is very central to the way that we've been thinking about Judo. Start with the end in mind. We're in 2021 now, and we've been spending the last 3 months thinking, what does Judo look like in 2027, 26, 27? So it's really important to be able to visualize what it is you're seeking to build, because then that's the light on the hill. And that's how you can then galvanize your resources and your people around doing that. Now, I should be absolutely candid here and say that it's one thing talking about a business that's grown over 3 or 4 years the way that you had expected it to, but it's also worth highlighting that these things don't happen easily. There are lots of banana skins that you sometimes stand on, often avoid. There are many times, certainly in 2016, when we were looking at our cash balance and looking at our liabilities in terms of bills that we had to pay, and there was at least 3 times, in fact, when the conversation was, well, we should really start thinking about packing all this in, because we're never going to be able to pay these bills and the mounting bills. So there are many dark days when you're trying to build a new business. It goes back to my point on resilience. It's really important to be very resilient. The vision that you've developed at the beginning is the vision that keeps you going. And on those dark days, you keep on reminding yourself of why you're doing it. You surround yourself, you build a really strong team. These businesses are never about an individual. They're always about a team. And one of the biggest decisions that we made right back in 2016 was to identify the people that we wanted to be part of this journey, and to convince them to leave the comfort, the warm bath of the jobs that they had inside the major banks and take the risk of helping build a new business. And it was a risk, because the chances of being successful with these types of business models is very low in reality, because otherwise a lot of people would be doing it. But convincing people to give up the job, the 10, 15, 20-year job at one of the major banks, and put at risk part of their career in joining judo, was one of the biggest challenges that we anticipated at the beginning. But we also said, if we can convince people to come work with us, then that's going to be a great testimony to the credibility of the business model. And I think of the 8 people that we targeted as part of the co-founding of the company, we got 7 of them. And I often reflect on the discussions they must have had at home when they went home to see their wife or husband and say, darling, I've been at ANZ, let's say, for 10, 15 years. We've got a nice secure job, but I'm quitting and I'm joining judo. And you can just imagine the partner saying, judo? Who are judo? But it was great. It was a great sense of confidence that we got when people said, yes, we're in on this journey. We want to be part of building a new SME bank in Australia. Eyes wide open, we did say to people that there's a reasonable chance that this won't work. But with the right people, that risk is reduced. We said it was going to be a multi-year journey, and that we were not going to be able to pay you as much as you were getting paid when you were in your last job. But we want people who think like equity owners, not employees. So we have all of our staff have an equity interest in the company, and obviously the people that came in really early, the senior people, have a reasonably material equity stake in the company. But the one thing that, as we went through this journey of highs and many lows, the valley, if you will, of trying to build a new business, and also building a bank, which is a heavily regulated business, we never lost sight of the vision. As we always said, that keep this vision in mind, stay true to the journey that we're on. Expect things to go wrong from time to time, but quickly get on top of these problems and manage them. And make sure that when you're hiring people, that people who join the company join it because they have a strong passion for the company, that they want to be part of building something, that they don't think like employees, but they think more like being on a mission to build a new bank, that it's never going to be the biggest bank. That's not our aspiration. Our aspiration is that we're going to be the best small business bank in Australia, and also build a world-class SME business bank, a bank that other people will look to as a benchmark from taking a PowerPoint idea 5 years ago into a growing, profitable business bank that is attracting new customers every day, that's gone from a valuation of a PowerPoint to a valuation today that is closer to $2 billion, and a bank that we believe can be worth a lot more of that, much more than that in the future. So the journey is rocky, but the most important thing, as I say, you need to have a very strong vision. You need to do your homework at the beginning. Spend a lot of time on the business plan. Measure twice, cut once. Don't leave things unaddressed. There's no point building a business on shaky foundations, because all you'll ever do is spend time going back trying to fix things that you should have fixed at the beginning. So build strong foundation. Build the case out A to Z. Make sure that you've understood the technology and the risks of technology. You've understood what the employee value proposition and the customer value proposition. You understand clearly how you're going to compete, what parts of the market you're going to compete in, what are the risks involved in your strategy, how sustainable is your strategy, and then how do you build scale in the business. And that, as I've mentioned this already, was a really important part. But all of our thinking on those and other aspects of the business was done in 2015, 2016. What we've been doing since then is executing on a very carefully crafted strategy that we developed back at that time. Now, some people say, well, who wants to spend a year or 6 months to 9 months building a strategy? Let's get on and do it. And there's a lot of very successful business that have that can-do attitude. But from my perspective, building a strong foundation with a very clear vision as to what it is you're building towards, but getting the foundation right at the beginning in terms of your thinking, your planning, your risk assessment, your understanding of what can go wrong and how to be managed is essential work, because then you're not surprised by things at a later stage. So that's the story, if you will, of Judo Bank. It's still a very young company. We see a very, very exciting future ahead of us. We expect that the company in 2 or 3 years' time will be very different from the company today, but there will be one common theme, one strong anchor about this company, and that's its purpose, to be the most trusted SME business bank in Australia. That will never change. And the other thing that will never change is the strategic narrative about why we exist, how it is we're going to compete, the importance of relationship banking, the importance of technology, building a modern technology platform, but having technology as an enabler of a great customer service, not defining a great customer service. We believe that human interaction with small to mid-sized businesses is going to be the key point of differentiation in building sustainable long-term relationships. Unashamedly traditional values on a very modern, cutting-edge operating business model platform. So on that note, and I could talk all afternoon about Judo, and I'd be very happy to take any questions that you might have. But thank you for listening to me, and I'm really looking forward to your questions. Thank you.